I gave him my past, my present, my dreams, only to wake and find he had built a world without me behind my back. The betrayal didn't just deep, it erased every memory we made. Another man at my bachelorette party 3 weeks before my wedding, and in that single moment of selfishness, I destroyed 8 years of most beautiful love I'll ever know. His name was Marcus. Dark eyes, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that made my engaged self forget I was wearing another man's ring. We were at some rooftop bar in Miami. My bridesmaids were encouraging me to live a little, and when he leaned in close to tell me I was beautiful, I didn't pull away. The kiss lasted maybe 10 seconds. 10 seconds that would cost me everything. Jake had trusted me completely. Never questioned my girls' trips, never demanded to see my phone, never made me feel like I was on a leash. He was security and warmth and the kind of steady love that boring movies are made of. But that night, with tequila burning my throat and my friends screaming about how I needed to make sure before I got married, boring felt like a sentence. Marcus tasted like whiskey and bad decisions. He tasted like freedom from meal planning and Sunday morning grocery runs and discussing mortgage rates over coffee. He tasted like the I thought I was missing. When I pulled away, my maid of honor Sarah was filming. For the memories. She laughed but her eyes were cold. Later I'd realized she'd always resented Jake, always thought I could do better, always wanted to see me fail spectacularly. I deleted the video from her phone that night. I made all my bridesmaids swear to secrecy. I convinced it was just a moment of weakness, a last hurrah before settling down forever. But Marcus had given me his business card. And 3 days later, when Jake was working late again and I was sitting alone in our apartment surrounded by wedding favors and seating charts, I texted him. The affair lasted exactly 2 weeks. 2 weeks of afternoon hotel rooms and lies about yoga classes and work emergencies. 2 weeks of feeling alive in a way I hadn't since college. 2 weeks of telling Jake would never find out, that I could have both, that I deserved this excitement before committing to a lifetime of predictability. Marcus wasn't looking for love. He was married too, just looking for something easy and temporary. We both knew what this was. But knowing didn't make the guilt easier to carry, and it definitely didn't make the any less intoxicating. I started picking fights with Jake over things. The way he loaded the dishwasher. His boring work stories. The fact that he wanted to spend Friday nights at home instead of going out. I was trying to create distance, trying to justify what I was doing by painting him as inadequate. But Jake just tried harder, bought me flowers, planned surprise date nights. Told me he loved me more every day and couldn't wait to make me his wife. Each kindness was in my chest. Each, I love, was another lie I had to swallow. The last time I saw Marcus was on a Tuesday afternoon. We were in the same hotel room we'd been using, the one with the city view and the king bed that felt like a stage for my destruction. He was getting dressed, already checking his phone, already moving on to his reel. This has been fun, he said, not even looking at me. But I think we should probably call it here. Wedding soon, right? That. 2 weeks of throwing away my integrity, and he was dismissing me like a Netflix subscription he was canceling. I drove home in a daze. Sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, staring at my engagement ring. It was a vintage piece Jake had hunted for months to find, a delicate art deco setting that belonged to his grandmother. She'd given it to him on her deathbed, made him promise to only give it to someone who would love him completely. That night, Jake made dinner. His famous carbonara, the one he'd perfected just for me because it was my favorite. He lit candles, put on soft music, went down on one knee in our kitchen to propose even though we were already engaged. I know planning this wedding has been stressful, he said, his voice shaking with emotion. I know I work too much and not exciting enough sometimes. But I want to know that my whole world or my everything. I can't imagine a single day without. I said yes. I him with Marcus still on my lips. I let him make love to me that night with gentle hands and whispered promises while I closed my eyes and tried not to think about Tuesday afternoons in hotel rooms, and the way another man had touched me just hours before. The wedding was in 12 days. The dress was altered. The flowers were ordered. 200 people had already RSVP'd. I was gonna be fine. I was gonna bury this and be the wife Jake deserved and never think about Marcus again. But then Sarah called. I need to tell something, she said, her voice strange. About the video. My turn to ice. I thought I deleted it from everyone's phones that night, I whispered. Did. But I backed it first. I've been thinking about this for weeks and I don't think should marry Jake with this secret. He deserves to know. The room spun. Sarah, please. It was a mistake. It meant nothing. Then why did spend 2 weeks in hotels with him? She knew. Somehow she'd known all along. I hired a private investigator. She continued, her voice getting stronger, more righteous. Jake is my friend too. He loves so much and we're about to destroy his. If don't tell him, I will. I begged. I offered her money. I reminded her of every secret I'd kept for her, every time I'd covered for her own infidelities and mistakes. She gave me 24 hours. That night Jake found me crying in our bedroom. He held me close, stroked my hair, whispered that whatever was wrong, we'd figure it out together. I love no matter what, he said. There's nothing could tell me that would change that. But we both knew that wasn't true. I told Jake everything on a Tuesday morning, exactly 24 hours after Sarah's ultimatum, while he was drinking coffee and reading wedding RSVPs at our kitchen table. His face went through so many emotions I could track them like weather patterns. Confusion first, then a kind of bewilderment that broke something fundamental in my chest. Finally nothing. Complete, terrifying nothing. He set down his coffee cup with the careful precision of a man trying not to break things. The bachelorette party, he said quietly. That's why I've been different. I nodded, tears streaming down my face, but he wasn't looking at me anymore. And there's more. It wasn't a question, so I told him about Marcus, about the hotels, about the 2 weeks of lies and yoga classes and the way I'd picked fights with him to justify my betrayal. Jake listened without interrupting. When I finished, he stood, walked to our bedroom, and started packing a suitcase. Jake, please. We can work through this. It meant nothing. He turned to look at me then, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not anger, not complete and utter disgust. If it meant nothing, he said, his voice eerily calm, then away 8 years for nothing. Destroyed us for nothing. Lied to my face every day for 3 weeks for nothing. He zipped the suitcase. I'm staying at my brother's. The wedding is off. I'll have someone come get my things. We're not here. Jake, wait. He picked his keys. Don't call me. Don't text me. Don't show at my work. We're done. Emily, we're completely done. The door closed behind him with a soft click that echoed through our apartment like a gunshot. I called in sick to work and spent the next 3 days in bed, alternating between sobbing and staring at the ceiling. I had to call 200 people to tell them the wedding was cancelled. I had to return gifts and cancel vendors and explain to my parents why their deposit on the reception venue was non-refundable. My mother cried harder than I did. How could do this to him? To us, Jake was family, Emily. We loved him like a son. My father wouldn't speak to me for weeks. But the worst part was watching Jake's through social media. He'd block me and everything, but I had accounts. Pathetic, desperate accounts that I used to the man I destroyed. He looked fine. Better than fine, actually. Within a month, he'd gotten a promotion at work. Within 2 months, he was traveling again, posting pictures from conferences and work trips. By 3 months, he'd bought a house. A beautiful craftsman bungalow with a garden and a wraparound porch. The kind of house we'd talked about buying together someday. He was thriving, rebuilding, moving on. Meanwhile, I was falling apart in increasingly visible ways. I lost my job 6 months after the breakup. Not because of performance issues, though my work had definitely suffered. I lost it because word had gotten around about why my wedding was cancelled, and my boss, who'd been friends with Jake's family for years, decided my moral character didn't align with company values. That's the thing about small towns. Everyone knows everyone, and news travels fast. Especially news about the girl who cheated on Jake Morrison, the sweetest guy in 3 counties. I became a cautionary tale. Mothers would point me out to their daughters at grocery stores. See her. That's what happens when don't appreciate what have. I tried dating, but word had gotten around there too. Men would take me out once, maybe twice before disappearing. A few were bold enough to tell me why. I'm not looking to be anyone's backup plan, one said. Eve could cheat on Jake, could he cheat on anyone? They weren't wrong. The loneliness was suffocating. Sarah had stopped talking to me completely after Jake thanked her for telling him the truth. My other bridesmaids had gradually drifted away, uncomfortable with my desperation and the constant drama. Even my family kept me at arm's length, ashamed of what I'd done to such a good man. I started therapy, but my therapist was a friend of Jake's aunt, so that was awkward. I tried a support group for people who'd ruined their relationships, but mostly I just listened to other people's stories and felt even worse about my own choices. The real breaking point came 8 months after the breakup, when I ran into Jake at a coffee shop downtown. He looked incredible. Tan from a recent vacation, wearing clothes that actually fit him properly, hair styled in a way that made him look younger and more confident. The kind of glow that happens when someone sheds dead weight and starts living for themselves. Emily. He nodded politely like I was an acquaintance he barely remembered. Look good, I said, trying to smile. Really good, thanks. He ordered his coffee. A different drink than he used to get, I noticed. Even his taste had evolved without me. How's the house? I asked desperately. I saw the pictures on. I heard bought a place. It's great. Really peaceful. Peaceful. The word hit like a. Our together had never been peaceful in the end, had it? I'd made sure of that with my fights and my guilt and my restless dissatisfaction. Jake, I have to go. He said, not unkindly but firmly. Take care of him. He walked out without looking back, leaving me standing there with my overpriced lat and the crushing realization that he was completely, utterly over me. That night I drove by his house. Just to see it, I told. Just to understand what kind of he was building without me. It was beautiful. Warm light spilled from the windows, and I could see him in the kitchen cooking dinner. But he wasn't alone. There was a woman with dark hair and a easy laugh, wearing one of his sweaters. She moved around his kitchen like she belonged there, comfortable and natural in a way I'd never managed to be even after years together. She was beautiful, but not in an obvious way. Pretty in the understated manner of women who don't need to try too hard because they're confident in who they are. The kind of woman who probably didn't need constant validation or excitement, or the thrill of almost getting caught with someone else. The kind of woman I'd never been. I watched them cook together, watched him smile at something she said, watched him kiss her forehead with the gentle affection he used to save for me. They looked happy. They looked peaceful. They looked like everything I'd thrown away for 10 seconds with a stranger in 2 weeks of hotel room afternoons. I drove home to my studio apartment and my empty bed and my reputation that preceded me everywhere I went, and I finally understood what I'd really lost. It wasn't just Jake, it was the version of who'd been worthy of his love. 2 years after I destroyed I found out Jake was engaged. Not from him, obviously. From Facebook, where his brother posted a picture of the proposal. Jake down on one knee on a beach somewhere tropical. The same grandmother's ring I'd worn for 2 years sparkling on another woman's finger. Her name was Claire. She was a pediatric nurse who volunteered at animal shelters and ran marathons for charity. She had the kind of genuine smile that made everyone around her light, and in every photo, Jake looked at her the way he used to look at me. Like she was his whole world. The engagement photos were perfect. Professional but not pretentious. Claire wore a simple white dress and Jake wore the navy shirt that brought out his eyes. The one I'd bought him for his birthday 3 years ago. They looked effortlessly happy, the kind of couple people root for. I scrolled through the comments until I found what I was looking for. Jake's aunt had written, "So glad found someone who appreciates what an incredible man are. Claire is perfect for." The subtext was clear. Unlike lying, cheating ex, I closed my laptop and walked to the bathroom mirror, staring at the stranger looking back at me. 2 years of guilt and loneliness had aged me badly. Dark circles that concealer couldn't fix, lines around my eyes from crying. Hair that I'd stopped styling because what was the point? I looked like exactly what I was, a woman who destroyed her own and spent every day since drowning in the consequences. The wedding happened 6 months later. I wasn't invited obviously, but social media provided plenty of coverage. Claire looked radiant in a dress that was everything mine would have been but better. Jake looked happier than I'd ever seen him, surrounded by the same friends and family, who'd once prepared to celebrate our marriage. The venue was the botanical garden where Jake had first told me he loved me, where we talked about having our own wedding someday, back when I was still someone worth loving. I recognized the faces in the photos. Jake's college friends who'd been his groomsmen in our wedding plans. His cousins who'd flown in from across the country, his grandmother's friends who'd known him since he was a baby. All the people who would have been at our wedding, celebrating our love instead of his love for someone else. The worst part was seeing how genuinely happy everyone looked. No forced smiles or wedding day stress. Just pure joy for a couple everyone believed in, everyone was rooting for. The couple I could have been part of if I'd been a different person. A better person. I started drinking more after the wedding photos went. Not enough to be a real problem. Just enough to make the evenings bearable. Just enough to sleep without dreaming about botanical gardens and grandmother's rings and the way Jake used to say my name like it was something precious. Work was going better at least. I'd finally found a company that didn't know my history, where I could be just another marketing coordinator instead of that girl who cheated on Jake Morrison. But even there, I felt like I was constantly hiding, constantly waiting for someone to discover who I really was underneath the professional facade. Dating remained impossible. I'd tried apps, blind dates, even speed dating events in neighboring towns where no one knew my story. But I couldn't connect with anyone. Every man I met felt like a placeholder, a poor substitute for what I'd lost. Worse, I'd become the kind of woman who looked at every relationship with suspicion. If a guy was too nice, I wondered what he was hiding. If he was exciting, I worried he'd cheat on me the way I'd cheated on Jake. I'd poison my own ability to trust or be trusted. I'd become undateable in every possible way. The third year was when I started seeing Claire around town more often. She'd moved in with Jake after their engagement, and they'd become one of those couples who did everything together. Grocery shopping, morning coffee runs, evening walks with the golden retriever they'd rescued together. They looked so natural together, so comfortable. The way Jake and I had looked in our early photos, before I'd started taking his love for granted and looking for something more exciting. One Saturday, I saw them at the farmer's market. Jake was carrying Claire's reusable shopping bags while she picked out vegetables, both of them laughing at something on her phone. They moved around each other with the easy choreography of people who'd found their rhythm, who fit together without having to work at it. Jake looked older, but in a good way. More settled, more confident, the kind of man who'd learn his worth and wouldn't accept anything less than he deserved. Claire was wearing a sundress and sneakers, her hair in a messy bun, no makeup. She was beautiful in the most effortless way, secure enough in Jake's love that she didn't need to be. All the time. I remembered being that comfortable once, being loved so completely that I could be without fear, without performance, without the constant anxiety that I wasn't enough. That night I wrote Jake a letter I'd never send. Pages and pages of apologies and explanations and desperate pleas for forgiveness. I told him about the therapy and the loneliness and the way I thought about our lost future every single day. I told him about Marcus showing at my workplace 6 months after our affair ended, and demanding to know why I'd disappeared, on him. How he'd called me pathetic for throwing away a sure thing, for someone who'd never really wanted me. I told him about the STD scare that had lasted 3 terrifying weeks, and how I'd realized that in all my selfish focus on excitement and passion, I'd risked his health along with his heart. I told him about the nights I drove by his house, not to him but just to see the warm light in his windows and remember what home looked like. I wrote until my hand cramped and my eyes burned, pouring out 4 years of regret and self-hatred and desperate love for a man who'd moved on so completely that I might as well have been a character from a book he'd read once and mostly forgotten. Then I burned the letter in my kitchen sink and watched the smoke rise like the last of my hopes for redemption. Year 5 was when I finally accepted that this was my now. Not a temporary consequence or a rough patch, but the actual shape of my existence. I was 32 years old, living alone in a city where everyone knew my worst moment, working a job that paid the bills but felt meaningless. I'd built a small around my big mistake. Therapy twice a month, a book club with other women who didn't ask too many personal questions. Volunteer work at the animal shelter on weekends, where dogs didn't judge me for my past and cats didn't care about my reputation. It wasn't a bad exactly, just empty. Like a house with all the furniture but no people to make it home. Jake and Claire had their first baby that year. A little girl they named Hope. The birth announcement showed in my Facebook memories like a to the chest. All pink blankets and proud daddy smiles and Claire glowing with the kind of happiness I'd only seen in movies. I knew I should unfollow Jake's family members, stop torturing with updates about that could have been mine, but I couldn't. Those photos were the only connection I had left to the person I used to be, back when I was someone worthy of love and family and hope. The baby looked exactly like Jake. Dark hair, serious eyes, the tiny frown he used to make when he was concentrating on something important. I wondered if she'd inherit his kindness too, his steadiness, his capacity for unconditional love. I wondered if she'd grow hearing stories about the woman who almost became her stepmother, who'd all away for reasons no one could understand. Probably not. Jake wasn't cruel enough to burden a child with my failures. But sometimes when I saw them at the grocery store or the park, I'd catch him looking at me with something that might have been pity. Not anger anymore, not just the distant sadness might feel for a stranger who'd made terrible choices. That was somehow worse than hatred. It meant he'd moved on so completely that I'd become a cautionary tale even to him. A reminder of what not to settle for, what not to accept, what not to trust. Last month I ran into Sarah at the mall. She was with her husband and 2 kids, looking exactly like the suburban mom she'd always wanted to be. When she saw me, her face went through the same uncomfortable expression I'd learned to recognize everywhere. The look of someone trying to decide if they should acknowledge me or pretend they hadn't seen me. "Emily," she said finally, because ignoring me would have been awkward with her kids watching. "Hi Sarah." We made small talk for exactly 90 seconds. Her kids were beautiful, her husband seemed nice, her was everything she'd planned it to be. "I heard about Jake's baby," I said, because I'm apparently a glutton for punishment. "She's beautiful, they're so happy." The silence stretched between us, filled with everything we weren't saying. About the video. About the private investigator. About the choice she'd made to me in the name of friendship. "I did the right thing," she said suddenly, reading my thoughts. "He deserved to know." "I know," I said, because she had. Jake did deserve to know. He deserved honesty and loyalty in a woman who wouldn't throw away his love for a stranger's attention. He just didn't deserve to get any of those things from me. I hope we're doing okay, Sarah said, but her eyes said something different. They said I hope learn lesson. I hope understand what lost. I hope never forget. Don't worry, wanted to tell her. I never will. Now it's been 6 years since I destroyed my in a hotel room with a man whose last name I never learned. 6 years of watching Jake build the beautiful family and peaceful home and successful career that could have been ours. 6 years of being the ghost haunting my own story, the villain in someone else's happy ending. I'm 34 now and I finally stopped looking for redemption. There isn't any. Some mistakes don't get fixed. Some choices don't get undone. Some people don't get second chances, especially when they've proven they can't be trusted with first ones. Jake and Claire just bought a bigger house with a swing set in the backyard and a vegetable garden, where little Hope can learn to grow things instead of destroying them. I still live in the same studio apartment, still work the same meaningless job, still wake every morning to the same empty bed and the same heavy knowledge of what I await. The only difference is that I've stopped pretending this is temporary. Stop believing I'll eventually meet someone new or find a way to forgive or somehow rebuild the I incinerated. This is it. This is what I chose when I chose Marcus over Jake, excitement over stability, momentary pleasure over lasting love. I chose to become the woman who had everything and destroyed it for nothing. The cautionary tale mothers tell their daughters. The ex-girlfriend people remember not for who I was, but for what I did. The woman who gave a good man 8 years of her, then spent 10 seconds taking it all back. And the cruelest truth of all, if I could go back, if I could have those 10 seconds in that Miami bar again, I know exactly what I'd do differently. But time doesn't work that way, and neither does love, and neither does forgiveness. Especially not from the person in the mirror, who knows exactly how little I deserved any of it in the first place.